Welcome back to the Lumiose Post, where we talk about all things Pokemon, and today we gotta talk about these new Pokemon. Now, we're not talking about Raging Bolt and Iron Crown, at least not yet, but we are going to be talking about the new evolutions we saw for Applin and Duraludon. Those are, of course, Applin and Archaludon. And first, let's just take this in for a moment. I mean, we got an evolution to Applin, who already had 2 evolutions, and we got an evolution to Duraludon, and we'll get into why that's crazy. And also, both of these are Galar Pokemon, so we just got these, like, what, 3-4 years ago, we were introduced to these Pokemon, already getting new evolutions for them, and I gotta say, I love that. That makes me think, like, you know, the door is really open for any Pokemon. It kind of felt like Gen 6, maybe, and below were kind of the candidates, but we wouldn't see anything for Gen 7 or Gen 8. But now, going forward, I mean, we could get a evolution to Hawlucha, or maybe an evolution to Grapploct. I don't know what they'll do, but I'm very excited to see it. You know, maybe these aren't even the last of the evolutions we'll see in the DLC. I imagine there probably aren't many, because there weren't many in the base game of Scarlet and Violet, but none of that matters. Let's break down why these things exist, both in lore and out of lore, like, you know, in real world, why they made them, and in the games, why they're a thing. Let's get right into it, and let's begin with Applin. So, Applin is super interesting because it is, like, I mean, it looks very similar to Applin, right? Like, I don't know about you guys, but when I first saw this thing on screen, when I was watching the trailer, I immediately assumed, oh, look, that's an Applin evolution, or not an evolution, but a convergent or a regional form. I did not think evolution anyway, but then sure enough, they go, this Pokemon is Applin, the evolved form of Applin, and I'm like, all right, well, there it is. I mean, really did not call that at all. I was floored by that. I was floored by Duraludon getting something too, but this one especially floored me just because of how similar it looks to Applin. But it does make sense. This Pokemon is based off of candy apples, which is a popular summertime snack, and a big theme of the Teal Mask is this Festival of Masks, which is very much inspired by a Japanese festival. I think it's just called the Summer Festival. I'm sure it's, you know, called something different in Japanese, but it's basically a festival that's held in the summer. So GameFreak's really wanting to hammer home Pokemon that give a summer vibe, and so they use this candy apple Pokemon, which really works kind of, I don't know about Europe, but works in both Asia and America, because I know over here in America, this is also a Pokemon I associate with, like, fairs and stuff, which does make me think of the summertime. So I think that, you know, candy apples totally works. I love it. Now, how this thing will probably evolve in the game, to be honest, is I imagine you'll give Applin an item called, like, a candied apple. The reason I think this is because if you look at how it evolves into Flapple and Appleton, it evolves into Appleton by giving it a sweet apple, and it evolves into Flapple by giving it a tart apple. And so this is kind of interesting, because it makes me wonder, are we going to start, like, is Applin going to be like the new Eevee, but instead of changing types, we're just going to get different apple-themed, you know, snacks and foods and stuff with its evolutions? You know, am I going to be able to give it apple butter in an Appalachian Mountain inspired region and it evolve into an apple butter based Pokemon? I don't know, but it's super exciting. The door truly is just blown wide open with this Pokemon. But there is still something that's a little weird about this Pokemon, and that is that there's actually 2 Pokemon inside this one Pokemon. You know, very similar to Pokemon like Phalanx or Dragapult, this Pokemon actually has 2 Pokemon living inside it. It states on the official website that the head you're seeing of Applin is actually the head of one worm, whereas the tail is actually the tail of another worm. So this is 2 different Pokemon. Now, personally, this is purely speculation, but I believe that Applin may not be the last evolution that we see. I think that Applin may evolve one more time. And the reason I think this is because if you just look at the design, it's very simplistic. Like we said, it's very similar to Applin. So it makes sense that they'd want to take it a little bit further. But then also, to be fair, like, it also just makes sense. You know, they're going to probably want to show the 2 worms. Like, we might get a big candy apple with 2 worms coming out of it, you know, and it's almost like a little Hydra. I would love that. I don't know. I'm excited to see what happens to this thing. Maybe it's nothing at all, but I do hope it evolves further because, you know, it is a simple design. I'm very happy Appling got something, but it is a simple design and can go further, so I do hope it does. Which, by the way, let me know what your thoughts are on these Pokemon, both Dipplin and Archaludon. I'm really curious to hear what y'all think of them, because I've seen very mixed reviews of Dipplin. I feel like a lot of people think it's cute, but do think it's pointless as an evolution, which I understand. I'm willing to forgive it, because again, Appling got some love, and Applin's incredible. So I'm gonna forgive it, but I understand if you can't. Now moving into Archaludon, they took Duraludon and they turned it into a bridge. Duraludon was previously based off of the Shard, which is a huge building in London, but now it is seemingly based off of a bridge. And I have seen a lot of people say it's based off of like a bridge in London and something, but I'm gonna be real with you, I don't think that's it. I think that Archaludon, excuse me, it's actually based off of the Manhattan Bridge and is a homage to Unova. If you look at the Blueberry Academy, there's so many Unovan things going on here. It's actually kind of wild. You know, you have this character who looks a lot like Drayden, and his name is Drayton, and he has Zorua hair, Hisuian albeit, but still Zorua, and he is using this Archaludon thing. So what I think that this Pokemon is it not only is showing off bridges, because Unova is known for its bridges. It has 5 off the top of my head very famous bridges, those being the Sky Arrow Bridge, the Tube Line Bridge, the Driftveil Bridge, or Driftveil Drawbridge, also called the Charizard Bridge. There's the Marvelous Bridge, and then the Village Bridge. So a lot of different bridges in Unova, and I think this Pokemon really is just a big tease to Unova. You know, there have been discussions about Unova remakes next year, but even with those, even if Unova remakes don't happen next year, Drayton clearly has ties to Unova, so I think at least it is a tease towards Unova in the sense that it's used by a Unova-related character, if that makes sense. But another thing this could resemble is, a lot of people know this, but there's actually a good deal of history between America and the United Kingdom. You know, previously England had colonized the majority of America, or the majority of the East Coast of America, rather. One of these parts was modern-day New York, which happens to be the real-world inspiration for Unova. So it makes sense that they would kind of tie a very British mon, you know, it literally represents a tower in London, and then they'd kind of like colonize it in a way, and it becomes an American thing. I think that's kind of a cool reference to the history between real-world England and the United States. I think that's neat, and I do think that's totally what they're going for. Now, in lore, why did Duraludon evolve? Well, I gotta be frank, this is a tougher one to think about, because Duraludon's already a pretty strong Pokemon. Duraludon is boasting a base stat total of 530, which is nothing to be upset about. I mean, that's a pretty solid base stat total. So giving it an evolution is kind of crazy. You know, this is the highest Pokemon to ever get a evolution cross-gen. I'm pretty sure this is the highest base stat total Pokemon to do that. I'm pretty sure. Someone can correct me in the comments below. But either way, it's super weird that this Pokemon's getting one just because of its base stat total. But I imagine that an in-game reason for it happening is that perhaps Duraludon has been exposed to some kind of new energy, and it has taken on this new form to harness it. We do see that it can harness this energy into a new attack called Electro Shot, and you know, you can even see it on the little bridge part of it. It's got the little wires going, it's got that energy going through its body. So I think that's what it is. Duraludon just found a way to tap into another kind of energy and evolve to better harness this energy. Very similar, by the way, to how Stantler evolved in Legends Arceus. You know, Stantler evolved there by kind of diving further into its psychic abilities, giving it a normal psychic evolution. Psychic being a typing that it didn't have before, even though it had a lot of psychic moves under its arsenal. I've also previously speculated that Dunsparce could have evolved into the Dunsparce, perhaps by being exposed to Infinity Energy in the soil of Paldea, whether that is through Herba Mystica or the crystals that you see in Area 0 that causes terrestrialization. I don't know, but Dunsparce is a burrowing Pokemon, so I speculated the soil is probably a lot richer, and that's what caused it to evolve. We also see that Herba Mystica does make Pokemon bigger, and Dunsparce's evolution is basically just Dunsparce getting bigger. So I imagine that if Dunsparce can evolve due to an energy in the ground, an energy that's able to access now, Duraludon can as well. And again, Stantler kind of is doing it itself with its own latent abilities. Just a quick thing to note here on Archaludon too is, looking at that base stat total, that 530 base stat total, I wonder if Archaludon will be very similar to Scizor, where Scyther got an evolution in Scizor, but what they did was, instead of buffing Scyther's stats when it evolved, they actually just redistributed it into a different way. So Scyther's much more quick than Scizor, and Scizor's much more bulkier than Scyther is. Then, of course, Scyther also changes the flying type for the steel typing. Perhaps Archaludon will just see a stat redistribution and will still have a base stat total of 530. What I would like, though, would be if they made Archaludon have a base stat total of 600, because it does talk about how Duraludon is a rival to Tyranitar. And I'm sorry, I don't see it. I mean, it's weaker than Tyranitar. It now is an unevolved Pokemon. So I think giving Archaludon a 600 base stat total would further justify that. It would also be cool to be our first 2-stage pseudo, which would be pretty neat to see. But either way, no matter what they do, I'm sure it'll be fun. Also, just an interesting thing to point out, Archaludon did lose Duraludon's special signature ability. Duraludon was the only Pokemon to have the ability Stalwart, which allowed it to basically use moves without the moves getting redirected. So, like, it can use Thunderbolt on a Pokemon without Storm Drain soaking it, or Lightning Rod, soaking it up. It could use a Water-type Terra Blast without Storm Drain soaking it up. And it could use a move even when an Amoonguss Rage Powders. It could hit the target that it wants to hit. It'll ignore that Rage Powder. So it did lose that ability. Maybe it'll be its hidden ability, but its current abilities are Stamina and Sturdy, which Stamina is going to be pretty broken as is. So maybe that's why they took Stalwart away. But I don't know. I'm really excited about these two Pokemon. I'm excited to see them in action. I do love competitive and stuff, so I'm really excited to see how they perform, especially Archaludon. People are already talking about beat up stamina strategies with Mousehold, and that is horrifying. But yeah, be sure to let me know what you think of these two Pokemon in the comments below. Be sure to let me know what you think is the reason that they evolved. All that in the comments below. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications so you don't miss our future videos. And until next time, I'll see all of you later.